Welcome to another episode of 40 Minutes in the Old Testament. 40 Minutes in the Old Testament is a 1517 Podcast Network podcast. You can go to 1517.org/podcast and check out all the other podcasts that are living over there. While you're over there, make sure you check out everything else that 1517 is doing. One of the things that 1517 is doing, of course, is publishing books. And you can order Chad's latest book, which by the time this releases will be out. We're not talking about a pre-order here anymore, Chad. I mean, if you didn't do the pre-order, no need to do that. You can just order it and probably get it in your hands in a quickness, Get on Amazon or go over to the website, order it there. Untamed Prayers. You want to learn how to pray in that wild way? Looking at the Psalms as an example? Well, Chad will get you hooked up with that. So check out that book if you have not ordered that yet. We are in Isaiah chapter 41. We've been on a little stretch of some kind of comfort. I mean, literally, we had comfort. That was a theme a couple episodes ago. And then we had sort of the greatness of God. And we had some classic Isaiah verses, some well-known Isaiah verses about, mounting up with wings as eagles. Those are all positive things. And we're going to get a little more in that vein as we get into chapter 41.
Yeah, 41 then into 42. It's more good stuff. It's kind of nice to get out of all the oracles against the nations. We'll have some of that coming up. But yeah, I think these are some of people's favorite chapters in Isaiah because they are, like you said, they're full of comfort, full of good news. And Isaiah 41 is going to continue this. It's a little bit different focus. We're going to start out here with kind of a judgment scene. The prophets do this a lot, where God has multiple roles. He's like the judge, and he's the jury. He's the prosecutor. He eventually pronounces the verdict, but he likes to kind of gather people together in this courtroom scene and to try the case. And as you go through the rest of the chapter, you'll see basically the case is, okay, who's God? Is it me or is it these idols? Let's talk about that. Let's see what they can do and let's see what they can't do. And let's see what I can do and what I am doing and have always done. So there's a focus here on the peoples on the coastlands, upon those who are worshiping idols. And God is going to address that. And he's also going to begin to talk about bringing somebody from the east. We're going to meet that already in verse 2, and that's going to come up again later in the chapter. And this is eventually going to lead us to chapter 44, which, of course, is a few episodes away. And that's when we're going to actually get a name for this guy, Cyrus. So I'll read the first, 4 verses. Get us rolling. Listen to me in silence, O coastlands. Let the peoples renew their strength. Let them approach, let them speak, let us together draw near for judgment. So this is the summons. The coastlands is Iyim in Hebrew, and that's one of Isaiah's favorite words. We've talked about it a couple times in previous episodes. Basically, this is his word for the far-flung areas of the world. So just don't think of places by the water, but all the places, all the peoples, all the nations, the coastlands. So gather together. Now, God's going to pose this question. He goes on to verse 2. Who stirred up one from the east, whom victory meets at every step? He gives up nations before him, so that he tramples kings underfoot. He makes them like dust with his sword, like driven stubble with his bow. He pursues them and passes on safely. By paths his feet have not trod. That Hebrew could also be translated something like... by paths his feet do not even touch. It's kind of this image of he's just kind of gliding through the air. He's moving so quickly. So either his paths his feet have not trod, or paths his feet don't even touch, because he's just moving along, flying along. And then he goes on to ask who again. Who has performed and done this and called the generations in the beginning? And then he gives the answer at the end of verse 4. I, Yahweh, the first, and with the last, I am he. So this opening question in verse 2, who, is, of course, God. God's the one who stirred up this one from the east. But the bigger question, and you're going to get a range of answers to this, is who's he talking about? So obviously it's somebody from the east And obviously this person is engaging in various kinds of conflicts, and he's always victorious. Victory meets him at every step. Nations fall before him. He tramples kings underfoot, makes him like the dust with his sword, like stubble with his bow. So the older commentaries, Martin Luther does this, the Church Fathers do this. They actually understand this. It was kind of surprising to me, but they think this is Abraham. So, yeah, they if you read Luther's commentary on Isaiah 41, he talks a lot about Abraham. And I get it. I mean, it does fit with the Genesis narrative because, of course, God does call Abraham from the east, calls him from Ur of the Chaldees. He calls him from what we today refer to as Mesopotamia. And then he comes. And yes, Abraham did engage in various conflicts. I mean, Genesis 14 especially, that's where you have the whole Melchizedek narrative. But before you get to the Melchizedek part, what is Abraham doing? Well, he's had to go rescue Lot because you have Kedorlaomer and these other kings who have come through and they've wiped out Sodom and Gomorrah. They've taken Lot and his family as POWs, and Abraham goes out as a warrior, and he does trample them underfoot. He is victorious. So I guess it's possible that this one from the east is certainly Abraham. Although I think as you keep reading, if you read this in context, and you see how God keeps referring to this one that he's stirred up, that he's awoken, that he's bringing, probably a better fit is going to be Cyrus, that we're eventually going to get to, the Persian king who eventually brought victory against the Babylonians, allowed the Israelites to return to build the temple in Jerusalem. But it could be, he's just kind of leaving it generic at this point and letting you guess as to who this is.
One of the things he does, I think this is right. He describes somebody, but then also, much like God does, says like, "Hey, so who is it?" And it's like, "It's me," right? So, where God, so God will send Chaldeans, or like He might raise up Cyrus or whatever. So He describes a guy, and then, but at the end of the day, it's like, so like who's done all this?
Who's really behind all this?
Who's all behind this? And it's like, the first and the last, of course. Nothing escapes my attention.
Yeah. It's a rhetorical question. It's right. It's not like really seeking an answer, because when God says, I wonder who it was that is orchestrating and shepherding all of human history. I wonder who that might be. Yeah, of course. God is the one who's doing this. And this is going to be a big theme in the whole rest of Isaiah, of course. This is God alone. He's the only true God. All the idols are false gods. He's the one who's orchestrating the events. He's the one who is, in his providential guiding of history, is making sure that everything falls into place the way that he, in his infinite wisdom, has decided it should fall into place for the good of his people. So lest someone think, oh, man, look what these great kings have done. Or even if they think, oh, look at this great thing that Abraham has done, if you want to think this is Abraham. Well, that's fine. But look at the one who's behind this. And behind it is the one who's the first and the last. I am he. So that gets us going. That's 1 through 4. So we have this gathering together the coastlands, the islands, the nations. And God says to this gathered assembly, who's done all this? Well, it's me. So how are the coastlands and the other peoples going to react to this? That's 5 through 7. The coastlands have seen, and they're scared. They're afraid. The ends of the earth are trembling. So they've drawn near, and they come. And so what are they going to do? What do people do when they're afraid, when they're trembling, when they get together? Well, they're going to look for help, right? They're going to look for some kind of assistance. They're going to do what people always do. There's a deep-seated religious impulse. We got to do something for safety and security. So here's what they do. This is 6 and 7. Everyone helps his neighbor and says to his brother, be strong. The craftsman strengthens the goldsmith, and he who smooths with a hammer, him who strikes the anvil, saying of the soldering, it is good. And they strengthen it with nails so that it cannot be moved. Well, what's going on here? Well, they're making idols, right? That's what they're building gods. You got a goldsmith, you got a guy with a hammer, you got a guy with an anvil, you got a guy who's the welder, he's soldering, and you got another guy with nails, and he's nailing it all together. They're making an idol. They're engaging in that fundamental religious impulse, except it's directed the wrong way. They're scared, and what do they do when they're scared? Well, we got to do something. We're going to turn to these false gods. We're going to put our confidence in that, which is, when you step back from this, is if it wasn't so sad, it'd be humorous, because you got to make this idol, right? Your God needs a hammer and an anvil, and we got to put some nails in there, make sure he stays together. It's really, this isn't mocking, but it is in a way. Isaiah will explicitly mock the idols as we go along, but already this is implicitly mocking the ineptitude and the weakness of false gods.
Yeah, but you don't have to. You can go back to the early days to know that this is true. I mean, the people of Israel, they cross the Red Sea. Moses is gone for 5 minutes, and they're like, hey, maybe we should make it a god since we're out here in the wilderness. We need some protection. Mm-hmm. Right? So who knows what's going to happen to us? Who knows what's going to become of us? Hey, Aaron, get the materials together. Let's make ourselves some protection, which is the most absurd thing just saying it out loud sounds insane.
Yeah, sometimes just voicing it makes you realize the idiocy of this. But that is human nature. I hadn't really thought about it, but that might be that's a good barometer. How do you figure out what a individual, family, nation, culture, whatever it is? How do you find out what their God is? Well, just watch what they do in times of fear.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. That's probably going to be a pretty good indication of where their trust lies, because they're looking for something that's going to give them protection. And this something that they're going to rely on, well, that is going to be their God. Whatever shape it takes today. I think for most people, it's not going to involve getting a goldsmith and a welder and putting together some sort of gold or silver idol, but it will be something that is of this world, right?
Yeah.
It's not going to be God. It's going to be of this world, and that's going to be what their confidence is in. Okay, so takes us through verse 7. See what God has to say as we move on to 8. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you whom I took from the ends of the earth and called from its farthest corners, saying to you, you are my servant. I have chosen you and not cast you off. Fear not, for I am with you. Be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand. Man, that's another one of those well-known Isaiah verses.
Yeah.
You read it and you're like, yeah, that's featured in a lot of sermons over the years, and rightly so. I mean, I just look at those verses in parallel. Verse 10, especially those two lines. Fear not. Why should I not fear? For I am with you. Why should I not be dismayed? For I am your God. I am with you. I am your God. That sums it all up right there. So what does it mean for someone to be your God? Well, he's with you.
Yeah. Well, and it's in contrast to though you have this other group of people, they're in trouble, so they have to form some gods. Then he says, but, so there's a big but there, but you, Israel, my servant, it's not so with you. You don't have to go get the welder and the craftsman and find a goldsmith or anything like that, because you already got me, right? So I chose Jacob. Abraham was my friend. You've not been great, but I've not cast you off. I think that's kind of implied there. Like I chose you and I have not cast you off. I mean, people would understand if I did. It's not as though I've never had any reason to do so, but I haven't. And so, you have no reason to be afraid. You don't need to be dismayed. I'm going to uphold you because that's what I do. So no need to go get the idol assembling team together. I'm right here.
Yeah, there's you can't see it in the Hebrew in English, but I did notice this in the Hebrew too. There's kind of a a nice contrast too, because in verses 6 and 7, which immediately precedes this, you have three occurrences of the Hebrew root chazak, which is translated as be strong, and the craftsman strengthens the goldsmith. They strengthen it with nails. So three different times you have this same word that's used. And when you get to verse 9, it says, you whom I took from the ends of the earth. That's actually the same Hebrew root. So it's like, maybe you could translate it, you whom I strongly grabbed, we might say, from the ends of the earth. So here, in verse 6 and 7, they're all saying to each other, hey, let's be strong. We're going to strengthen the goldsmith. We're going to strengthen this idol with nails. And God's saying, yeah, the strength is in me. With my strong arm, I took Israel, Jacob, Abraham from the ends of the earth.
Well, it's a pretty big contrast to say, all right, here's the two kinds of people you've got. You've got these people, and what they do is they get together and they strengthen their God. And then you have these other people, and what they do is they have their God strengthen them. One of those is much better than the other.
It's a pretty day and night contrast. Yeah. We have introduced here, too, by the way, the language of servant, which in Hebrew is eved. And here it is Israel is being talked about. Jacob is being talked about, the offspring of Abraham, who is called here the friend of God. And of course, this servant language is going to feature prominently in the rest of Isaiah, of course, in the famous servant songs especially. We're going to get to one of those, in fact, in the very next chapter, chapter 42. But here, Israel is called the servant of God, the one that God has chosen. And he's connected, of course, to Abraham, who is called by this wonderful title, God's friend. You can also translate that as his loved one, his beloved. In fact, the Hebrew behind that is the verb for love. So his beloved friend, we might, if we want to kind of expand the translation, offspring of Abraham was the beloved friend of God. And that same imagery occurs in 2 Chronicles 20, verse 7, where he's called God's friend. Of course, it also occurs in James chapter 2, where he's called God's friend. And, I mean, that's exactly what Jesus slanderously is accused of being, right? He's the friend of sinners.
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing.
Sometimes people do that where they'll be like, oh, Abraham was a friend of God. And, probably because he was faithful and all this kind of stuff. And you're like, well, I mean, he had faith. Yes. That's certainly true. But what it seems like is definitely true of Jesus is that being a sinner is like a prerequisite for being friends with God. Like, this is who Jesus is directly maligned for being friends with. This is the kind of guy. Like, look at all his friends are sinners. This guy hasn't got one righteous friend. I'm telling you what. Like, all the people he's hanging out with are sinners. I mean, just tax collectors and fishermen, and that's like it, dude.
Yeah, he's not called the friend of Pharisees, right? Now, Pharisees were sinners, of course, but they didn't think that they were that sinful. So, but and I love it too because that really was it was meant as a slander, but like a lot of slanders, it ends up being a compliment. Yeah, look at that guy, friend of sinners. Yeah, that's exactly right.
Ends up being it's an insult that ends up being a title of great comfort to people who know they're sinners. One of my favorite Jesus encounters is when he's invited over to the Pharisee's house, because sometimes you think that Jesus only eats with sinners, but the truth is and he does because everyone's sinners. But the truth is Jesus just accepts every dinner invitation. When the Pharisee asks, "Hey, you want to come over for dinner?" Yeah, I'll come over. But then the woman of the night, comes in, and I love that in the Pharisee's head, he's like, "Well, he just must not know."
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he just doesn't know. That's got to be.
Surely he doesn't know.
I mean, if he knew, he would not be going along with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of funny. Jesus is like, oh, no, I know.
I know that you're thinking that right now. That's how much I know. But, yeah, that's instructive of trying to keep God too clean with his relationships. That I think that maybe we do that too. Wow. The only possible explanation for Jesus allowing something like this is just lack of information.
Jesus is like, no, actually, this is the program.
Yeah.
This is why I came, so that people like her, sinners, could come to me. That's precisely the mission that I was sent on.
Yeah. That's it. I love. Abraham being a friend of God is awesome because Abraham is this sort of father in the faith, and that's to be sure. But also, I mean, if you can go back and listen to our episodes in Genesis, wasn't as though Abraham was not a sinner.
No, he had a few problems. Yeah, like right away.
Yeah,
I don't think we talked about this. I know this is off topic, but even right away, God says, "I want you to leave everything. I want you to just leave your father, leave your father's house, and I want you to come to a land that I'm going to show you." And then right away, we're told, and Abraham took with him Lot. Was there something unclear about those instructions?
Yeah, that worked out great too.
Yeah, that worked out super great. Yeah, led to just all kinds of blessings in Abraham's life when this nephew tagged along, moves to Sodom of all places. Oh, goodness. Yeah, so Abraham is a friend of God because, God's a friend of sinners. And so he is the one loved by God. So God takes him, this is the contrast set up here between Israel, Jacob, Abraham, the Israelites in general. They know who their God is. He strengthens them. He says, don't be afraid. I'm with you. I mean, what do you have to be afraid? If God's on your side, you're always on the winning team. It doesn't matter how many people are against you. If God is on your side, then you're good. Don't be dismayed. I am your God. So that is takes us through verse 10. 11 is going to shift focus again to talk about the enemies, and it's going to give comfort to Jacob once more. Behold, all who are incensed against you shall be put to shame and confounded. Those who strive against you shall be as nothing and shall perish. You shall seek those who contend with you, but you shall not find them. Those who war against you shall be as nothing at all. So you got people, they're angry, they're furious, they're striving, contending, war, all this stuff. They're against God's people. And it's all going to come to nothing. Well, why is that? Because Israel is so great, righteous, powerful? No, because as he says in verse 13, for I, the Lord your God, hold your right hand. It is I who say to you, fear not. I am the one who helps you. So just undergirding, buttressing the whole argument. You're going to have people who are against you. I've chosen you. No need to be afraid, because it doesn't matter how mad they get, doesn't matter how much they strive against you, contend against you. Really what they're doing is they're striving and contending against me. And when they do that, of course, they're going to lose. They're going to be as nothing at all. In fact, this is pretty common imagery in the Psalms too. Verse 12 begins, you shall seek those who contend with you, and you're not even going to be able to find them. The Psalms will often talk about that. I was looking for this guy who once was against me, and you know what? I can't even find where he's at. He's like disappeared. God has vanished him. He's not even there anymore. So they're nothing. Can't even find him anymore. That's how complete the victory is that God gives to his people. Then verse 4, were you going to ask something? Okay. Then he goes on in verse 14 to paint this picture of what Jacob is going to do, because God is his God. He starts out by using something that strikes us as kind of strange. He's going to call Jacob a worm, which was a Hebrew thing. So you have several different places where if you're talking about kind of the weakness of a person, you would call him a worm. This is even in Psalm 22. Of course, the famous psalm Jesus prays from the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? Well, if you read on to verse 6, Jesus says, I am a worm and not a man. Same Hebrew word that's used here. Scorned by mankind and despised by the people. Of course, he's not saying he's not a man. He's using the image of a worm because he's weak. Well, of course he is. He's suffering, right? He's being put to death. And same thing happens in Job 25, verse 6. So to call someone a worm, it's not an insult. It's more like accenting the fact that you're weak. You're unable to do what you want to do. So that's what it starts out.
I mean, if God's going to call anyone a worm that like kind of deserves it and needs it, it's Jacob, right?
Yeah, this is true.
This is like you kind of need this, Jacob. You need to be told.
Yeah, Jacob definitely earned the worm title. That is for sure. So he says, "Fear not, you worm, Jacob, you men of Israel. I am the one who helps you, declares the Lord. Your Redeemer is the Holy One of Israel. Behold, I'm going to make you he calls him a worm, but then he goes on to say, I'm going to make you something better. I'm going to make you an instrument of destruction. I'm going to make you a threshing sledge." That's where you have these spikes on the bottom of this heavy wooden platform, and you pull it along, and it threshes the ground. You can think of it as a plow. It's not really a plow, but that's kind of the same purpose. So I'm going to make you a threshing sledge, new, sharp, and having teeth. You shall thresh the mountains and crush them, and you shall make the hills like chaff. You shall winnow them, and the wind shall carry them away, and the tempest shall scatter them. And you shall rejoice in the Lord, in the Holy One of Israel. You shall glory. So this is fitting. You look at Israel, and they're small among the nations. They're a worm in the midst of all these powerful, mountainous threats that surround them. But God says, no, nothing to worry about, because I'm the one who helps you. Yeah, you're a worm, but I'm going to make you into something which is powerful and destructive. You're going to be this threshing sledge. And this threshing sledge isn't going to just, tear up a little bit of ground. You're going to thresh the mountains and crush them. You're going to make the hills just like chaff that the wind drives away. In other words, you're going to be completely victorious, even though you are a worm, because I, the Lord your God, am going to make you into this threshing sledge. And when that happens, you shall rejoice, and you shall glory, not in you and what you've accomplished, but in me and who I am for you.
Yeah, this is the contrast, right? Where he's like, "Hey, you're a little wormy. You know it, I know it, but you got me. See, I'm the one who helps you. So, like, you're the little worm, and then I come along, and I make you a little worm into something different." And this seems like the whole point, right? Is that apart from me, worm, you remain. But with me, like, I do something totally different with you. But of course, it is me doing it, not you.
And this fits perfectly if you want to put these verses side by side with Psalm 22, where you have the Messiah called a worm. It's the same thing there. You look at him, you look at Jacob, you're like, yeah, man, there's no help for him. Look at the threats surrounding him, right? There's no way. You look at Jesus on the cross, and you're like, it's over. It's just, it's all our hope is lost. Look at that. He's weak. He's dying. He's bleeding out on the cross. And yet there's that divine reversal, of course, where the one who dies, the one who's weak, becomes the one who is powerful and exalted and victorious, because, of course, God is with him and leads to rejoicing into glory.
Yeah.
All right. Now verse 17. I'll read 17 through 20. When the poor and needy, so this is going to, before I read it, listen for, it's kind of a combination of Exodus kind of imagery and new creation kind of imagery. We've seen this before in some previous chapters of Isaiah. So when the poor and needy seek water, there is none, and their tongue is parched with thirst, I, the Lord, will answer them. I, the God of Israel, will not forsake them. I will open rivers on the bare heights and fountains in the midst of the valleys. I will make the wilderness a pool of water and the dry land springs of water. I will put in the wilderness the cedar, the acacia, the myrtle, and the olive. I will set in the desert the cypress, the plane, and the pine together, that they may see and know and may consider and understand together that the hand of the Lord has done this. The Holy One of Israel has created it. So this is kind of I don't know if it's expansion is the right word, or just a kind of a pivot to talk about things a little bit differently. Jacob the worm becomes the threshing sledge, and now you have the poor and the needy. That's a pretty common pairing in the Old Testament. The poor and the needy, they're thirsty. They're parched. So what does God do? Well, he reverses everything. He makes rivers on bare heights and fountains amidst the valleys, and all of a sudden the desert becomes this lush garden full of trees and water. And this is reason this is also kind of Exodus imagery. Of course, that's what God did in the wilderness. These people are thirsty, the poor, they're needy, they're complaining to Moses, they need a drink. So what does God do? He says, well, you see that rock over there? I'm going to make it into a fountain of living water. And it's going to give plenty of drink. You hungry? Well, wake up in the morning. There's your food all over the ground. Pick it up. You still hungry? I'm going to give you some quail. I'll give you some meat. So in the midst of deprivation, God provides nourishment. In the midst of a hopeless situation, God steps up to say, oh, I got plenty of hope for you. I'm going to give you that hope in order that you may see and know, consider, and understand that my hand did this. And I, the Holy One of Israel, I have created it. And that is that word from Genesis 1:1, bara, that God word where he does the creating for his people.
Yeah, and this is, again, like you see him, whether it's the worm, the poor and the needy. I mean, he's doing all these things, and there will be no doubt that he's the one who did it, right? So, hey, I'm going to do this, and they're going to see, they're going to know, they're going to consider, and then they're going to understand this one thing, that I'm the one who did this. There's no other way.
No other way. Yeah, it's. I mean, you see this in the miracles of Jesus, right? They're out in the wilderness. They're hungry.
Yeah.
And Jesus says, well, let's give them something to eat. The disciples are like, we got a couple loaves here. I don't think it's going to feed all these people. Well, when Jesus steps up, the hand of the Lord does this. The Holy One of Israel, he does the creating. And so in the wilderness of Judea, he does the same thing that God has always done. He provides what his people need.
Yeah, it is weird, too, because you'd think that, and with all this stuff that God's doing, these people probably just, I mean, that's got to do it, man. I mean, you're just all in for all time at that point. And I'm reminded of one of the funnier passages in Scripture when God is providing manna from heaven and stuff, but the people want to go back, and this was actually in the lectionary, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, and it just reads funny because they say, hey, there is nothing to eat out here, and we hate this worthless food. You're like, wait a minute, is there nothing to eat out of here, or what do you mean? What do you mean? There's nothing to eat out here, and you hate this worthless food? Which is it? Like, there's something to eat out here, or isn't there? And yeah, it just turns out they're like, yeah, we're just sick of this. There's nothing to eat except for this free thing that God gives us every day.
I don't know if I said this once or if I heard somebody said this once, but it's always stuck in my mind. That's like a teenager who opens the fridge,
yeah,
and looks in there, and there's like food everywhere in that fridge, and they say, God, there's nothing to eat in this house. It's like, no, there's nothing that you want to eat in this house. That's what's going on there. So I also was thinking of this line. I looked it up while you were talking. It's from Numbers 11. This is the rabble. They've got a strong craving. And they're weeping. Oh, that we had meat to eat. We remember the fish we ate in Egypt that cost nothing. The cucumbers and the melons and the leeks and the onions and the garlic. So they're missing their salads, I guess, for free, right? That's important too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It costs nothing.
Costs nothing. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Do you remember exactly what that cost you? You remember what was happening in Egypt back in those days? You know, maybe you have a little bit of amnesia going on here. We need to do a little rehearsal of what was happening to you when God stepped up and rescued you from that situation.
Yeah, all it did was cost everything. That's all. Jeez, man. Yeah, that's
just
like,
your freedom.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't want to get political, but I always think of that when people talk about the government giving money back to them, government giving them money. No, you do know where that money came from, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was from taxes, so they're not giving you free money. They're giving
not
you
a
some money
business.
back.
They don't generate any income on their own.
Yeah, the government gave me a bunch of money back at the end of the year. No, actually, they did not. They were giving you your money back to you. That's the way this works. Okay, back to Isaiah. So we're at verse 21. And this is kind of picking up the imagery that we began the chapter with, this court case. God says to them, set forth your case. Bring your proofs, says the King of Jacob. Let them bring them and tell us what's to happen. Tell us the former things, what they are, that we may consider them, that we may know their outcome. Or declare to us the things to come. Tell us what is to come hereafter, that we may know that you are gods. Do good or do harm, that we may be dismayed and terrified. And as one commentator said, you got to to appreciate this, you got to kind of pause between verse 23 and 24. So let me read that latter half. Do good or do harm, that we may be dismayed and terrified. The dramatic pause. Behold, you are nothing, and your work is less than nothing. An abomination is he who chooses you. So this is pretty typical prophetic language where they say, all right, tell you what, let's talk. Let's get your gods in here. Let's do a little bit of interviewing. Put them on the witness stand, and let's talk to these gods. Okay, tell us what happened in the past, and tell us what's going to happen in the future. In fact, just do something, right? Do good, do harm, anything, so that we can be dismayed and terrified in your presence. And of course, when nothing happens and nothing is said, that's when you have the pronouncement here at the end. Behold, you are nothing. In fact, your work is less than nothing. And then you have that closing line, an abomination is he who chooses you. That is as Greg Beale likes to put it, we resemble what we revere. So if you revere that which is an abomination, then that is what you yourself become. An abomination is he who chooses you.
This reminds me of that meme. You ever seen that meme where it's like a stick drawing and it's got like a guy and he's got a stick and then you put whatever the thing is that you're making a meme out of and he's poking it with a stick and it just says, do something. Right? Like you're poking it. Like, hey, that is how this reads. That you're like, do something great or do something anything. I just, anything. Show that you're alive.
Anything at all. Show that you're alive. Yeah. Show that you have existence. Speak. I don't know. Whatever it is. Yeah.
And you get
it's like the Psalms say. They have eyes, but they cannot see. They have ears, but they cannot hear. They have mouths, but they cannot speak. They have feet, but they cannot walk.
Yeah.
There's nothing there. So it's a nothing kind of God. Okay. How many verses do we have left? Maybe we can finish this.
Yeah.
25 through 29. This is more the language of stirring up. So God is speaking again. He says, I stirred up one from the north, and he has come. From the rising of the sun, and he shall call upon my name. He shall trample on rulers as on mortar, as the potter treads clay. So this is probably here Cyrus he's talking about at this point, even though he's not named. And then God, in contrast to the idols, God goes on to say, who declared it from the beginning, that we might know? And beforehand, that you might say, he's right. There was none who declared it, none who proclaimed, none who heard your words. I was the first to say to Zion, behold, here they are. And I give to Jerusalem a herald of good news. So God's the one who's announced this, in other words. And then he pivots in verse 28 and says, when I look, there is no one. He's looking among the nations. There's no one. Among these, there's no counselor, who, when I ask, gives an answer. Behold, they, that is the idols, they're all a delusion. Their works are nothing. Their metal images are empty wind. So God is the one stirring up this one from the north. He's declaring it from the beginning. He's saying to Zion, here they are, giving you this herald of good news. But when he looks out among the nations, there's nothing. They don't have anyone to give them the word of God. They don't have any idols who are able to accomplish anything. Their metal images are nothing but empty empty wind, which is ruach. And that will be a perfect transition when we come back to the ruach, the spirit that God puts upon this chosen servant that we'll hear all about in chapter 42.
All right. Look at, we did it. Full chapter done. We get to get into 42 next episode. Chad, I will see you then. Everyone, go buy Chad's book if you haven't done it yet. I mean, if you've made it now through this entire podcast, you obviously are interested in what he has to say. Go order the book. A link is in the show notes. All right, Chad, I'll see you next week.
All right, see you then. Thanks.